Welcome to Liberal Buzz Show. My name is Denise Dorey, and I'm your guest. I'm your host. My guest couldn't appear today and she couldn't call in either because she's in the process of being evicted, and as are a couple of my family members. So let's just put out some good vibes for her. Hope she figures out what she wants to leave the state because of the horrible air here in California. But don't grow cannabis outside, even though it would cool the climate, wouldn't it? So today we're going to have Gilbert Canedo on. He's a veteran who deserves a voice. He's definitely likes to voice his opinion, and so I support that. And so he's a veteran of the Iraq War. And he gets free cannabis. It helps him cope, helps him deal with pain, I suppose, or whatever. He'll tell you about it. And police killing should be recorded. He's saying that on his Facebook, that's cute. Police killing should be recorded as a public epidemic. Hey, G.
Hi there, Denise. Can you hear me?
I can. We can.
Oh, did you hear about the pipeline up in North Dakota, South Dakota?
I did.
Oh, you want to tell people what happened?
Please tell us.
Hello?
Please tell us.
Well, the stunt that Trump pulled turned out to be illegal. What a big surprise. And also, the price of oil has dropped so much that the whole project has become totally inefficient. So that pipeline will probably never be built now. Anyway, did you talk to people about veterans issues today?
Yes. Well, I just mentioned that you were going to call in about veterans issues, you deserve a voice about these things.
Oh, okay. Well, there's not much has changed under the Trump administration. Actually, things have probably gotten even worse because they're talking about privatization, and that's not what people were originally talking about.
You mean privatization of what? The VA? The Veterans Administration?
Well, what John McCain was talking about originally was giving everybody a card, like, a Medicare card, except it's a veterans card, and the veterans are assimilated into private practice. And that would definitely be beneficial because it would protect the veterans' rights. Now, the way it stands now, if there's malpractice going on, it's very difficult for veterans to get a just deal on that. It's hard to sue the U.S. government. As a matter of fact, veterans are not allowed to sue the U.S. government. They have a Court of Veterans Appeals that veterans have to go through, and that's just like a real tiny bottleneck that nobody gets through. And actually, I don't think any lawsuits have ever succeeded at the federal court level. They keep kicking the can down the road and saying they don't have jurisdiction, and they don't want jurisdiction. They have the federal court system right now is clogged up with corporate lawsuits, corporations suing each other, countries suing each other, big entities suing each other, and you very seldom ever see cases where individuals come out on top. So it's a very unjust court judicial system that we have in the U.S.
In the VA.
In the Bible it says,
yeah.
In the Bible it says, if you provide justice, everything else will take care of itself.
Well, in the VA, I've known people that tried to pursue various lawsuits against the VA, and I don't know anybody who actually won any money from them. Do you?
Well, the point is that the system is rigged, and veterans have a little justice in the court system. Actually, I would go as far as to say that terrorists have more rights than veterans do. Remember those terrorists that were held at Gitmo? One of the conditions for their release was that they wouldn't file lawsuits against the U.S. government. So why would they do that? Except maybe they were under threat, they were liable in the court system. Why would you have somebody sign their rights away?
Yes.
So anyway, they could just say that they were under duress. But I think that's a shame with veterans who put their lives on the line. Some of them don't survive and pay the ultimate price with their life and their blood, are treated as third-class citizens. So I mean that's a whole inhumane way of dealing with veterans.
So actually, the privatization would help the veterans in their health care system because they'd be able to pursue lawsuits against private entities?
Well, also, it keeps the doctors in check. If you know that if you can cause so many errors and get away with it, you're not going to try to clean up your act. Same thing with the criminals. If people know they can smoke crack in the Tenderloin and get away with it, they're going to do that. Same thing with the hospitals and the VA system. If they know they can deny people benefits, or if people end up dying because of malpractice, and they get away with it, they're not going to do anything to correct it. So it's if you don't do what you're supposed to do, you're going to get spanked. But in this case, the VA never gets spanked. It's one scandal after another. Nobody's held accountable. Veterans die. There's a big scandal. Congress writes a law that's totally useless. They actually wrote a law about 10 or 15 years ago stating that the Veterans Administration had to help veterans. Wow, I thought that was understood from the get-go. But anyway, it's sad. It's a good political football. A scandal happens. They throw the football back and forth, blame the Democrats and the Republicans, blame the bureaucrats. They don't have enough money to do what they have to do, or they don't have any oversight. So, I mean, it's very simple. You would think that after all the wars that the U.S. has been in, stuff like shell shock or head trauma would be a science by now. Cavemen were hitting each other on the head. They should know everything there is to know about head trauma. But no, they're relying on the National Football League to spearhead the studies and the research on traumatic brain injuries. But we've seen this before. We've seen this with Agent Orange. It took 60 years before veterans got their benefits for being exposed to Agent Orange. It got so bad that the veterans had to take Dow Chemical to a federal court, and the Supreme Court ruled that it was an act of war and there was nothing that could be done. But there were a lot of veterans that died in those 60 years that didn't get any benefits because it was tied up in the court system. Same thing with desert illness. Nobody wanted to take responsibility. They didn't know what it was. They said it was imaginary, yada, yada, yada. Hundreds of thousands of excuses. Meanwhile, veterans are dying like flies, and they finally end up paying veterans after half of them are dead. So you got the Agent Orange, desert illness, head traumatic brain injuries. It's just one scandal after another. You think that after all the wars that we've had, that they would have it down to a science. Right now, traumatic brain injury, the only way you can detect somebody with a traumatic brain injury is after they're dead and they cut their brain open and they find these enzymes in there. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's too late. Anyway, the thing is that their characteristics, people that suffer from traumatic brain injury, and those are depression, suicidal tendencies, mood disorders, a whole slew of psychiatric symptoms. And a lot of veterans get thrown out of the service because they take a blow to the head and they act out and get thrown out of the service. So that's sad. That's terrible. But anyway, they need to realize that by neglecting veterans, the veterans are not alone. They have parents, brothers and sisters, friends, relatives that see what's happening to veterans, and they're discouraged from going into the service or sending their kids into the service because the cost is too high. I mean, JFK said, don't ask what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. Well, I don't think that's exactly what he was talking about. Veterans coming back wounded and dying on the streets of America. So, I mean, right now you got 20 veterans dying all over the place from suicides, alcoholism, getting thrown in jail, getting shot by the police, dying from malpractice from the hospitals. But the cost is too high. And putting a slogan behind it doesn't make it right. So I think that the VA and the U.S. government needs to understand that they're depleting their future resources of soldiers if they keep mistreating the veterans the way they do. For instance, let me give you an example. If I'm a veteran in California, I have more rights under the flag of California than I do under the flag of the United States, the Stars and Stripes. The VA, they built the system around themselves so they're not accountable. It's a federal system, and they're using laws where if you have an Air Force base in a foreign country, it's not subject to the country's laws for I guess safety or health or whatever. So you have VA hospitals in California that are not subject to the same laws that patients are subject to in the state. Anyway, you have more rights and more benefits under the bear flag of California than you do under the Stars and Stripes. So I guess if you're advantageous enough to use the civilian system, you can protect your rights, but you don't exactly get the same type of care. You don't get extensive care that you would get from the Veterans Administration. And that's another thing, too, is they deem who is eligible for their benefits. When I got out of the service, people that were suffering from mental health issues were denied access to the VA system because they would only take people that were injured in the service, that were service-connected, and, of course, they never recognized all the injuries from traumatic head injuries, PTSD, and everything else. And they couldn't have been service-connected because they didn't even recognize what they were. So the veteran is totally at a big disadvantage legally and medically because he doesn't have the same rights as a U.S. citizen does.
And even the U.S. citizens, we have crummy health care too. They'll just tell you it's one thing when it's really another way, whatever's wrong. You know, they'll say, oh, it's your, and I love the way on TV they call it your pain and your whatever the disease is, you know, your heart failure. You know what I'm saying? Like it belongs to us. It's all, you know.
It's an obvious case of corruption. Me personally, I had a whole staff of doctors sign off that my disability was service-connected and went all the way up to the regional office, and some bureaucrat that wasn't even a doctor shot it down. So how's that possible? You have 10 doctors saying, yes, this is obvious that this is service-connected, and then you have a bureaucrat at the regional office shooting it down.
No medical
That's what I'm
authority.
talking about, that kind of injustice.
Yeah, of course.
And not only that, you could have a foremost authority on traumatic brain injury write a letter for you, and you bring it to the VA, and guess what? They'll shoot it down because the guy's not a VA doctor, even though he might be the foremost authority on traumatic brain injuries. That's what I'm talking about. The rules are skewed. The system is rigged. And that's why you have so many veterans dying after they come out of the service. After Vietnam, supposedly we took 59,000 dead American soldiers, troops from Vietnam, but it's estimated that 100,000 more died on the streets of America from alcoholism, suicide. They were jailed. Some of them died from bat hell. But anyway, they don't want to document that. So that war is detrimental. War is terrible for the soldiers. And to make things even worse, we get injured, and they take our rights away from us. Why? But they'll have big pompous parades saying how great we are. But can you be great enough to help veterans? So the problem continues. The Republicans and the Democrats will continue to kick the can down the road. Veterans will continue to die on the streets. But the U.S. government and the Veterans Administration, the cows will come home to roost when nobody wants to join the service. When everybody sees those veterans dying on the streets, they're going to say, well, I love my country, but I'm not willing to sacrifice my kids and have them die on the streets because of a corrupt system that refuses to correct itself. So anyway, we're just going to have to wait until another disaster happens, and then maybe eventually all the wars will be fought by machines, by drones, because the humans, it will be too expensive to take care of the humans after the wars. I mean, a drone, a robot is not going to have PTSD. It'll kill everything in the sector. That's what, they come out with artificial intelligence. You just tell the drone to kill all the humans in Sector 5. It's not going to be concerned about whether there's kids, animals, whatever. They're just going to follow orders and kill every human that's in Sector 5. That's the world of the future. Ordering thousands and thousands of drones to attack Sector 5 and kill all the humans. Scorched earth policy.
Well,
We
gee,
can never receive
you got
a
one.
sports
We got about.
policy from all the fires.
We got
You see all the
45. We
fires that
got
are going on in
45.
California.
We have 45 seconds left.
Okay, well, when you see those ruins from a war, you see some buildings survive.
Yeah.
The fires in California, they're totally wiped out. There's nothing left.
Okay,
so it's
gee.
worse than a war zone.
It does look like a war. It looks like a war zone. Just go to Oakland. It looks like a war zone, and they didn't even have a fire there. All right, thanks,
for
G.
giving me my 2 seconds of fame.
All right, cheers, G.
Outside the west,